What's up, closers? This is Kevin.
This is Ryan.
This is Becca, and you're listening to the Close of Business podcast,
The one and only STEM podcast for young professionals.
When the company laptops close,
the beer's open,
and the conversation flows.
All of this and more happens
at the Close of Business.
Welcome to episode 37 of the Close of Business podcast. Closers, today's episode is really cool. It's a topic we've been trying to talk about for a while, but things just kept getting pushed back, and I won't leave you hanging anymore. The topic is smart cities.
So before we get into the interview with Fred Ellermeier, who's the VP of Connected Communities at Black Veatch, which is kind of the smart cities group of Black Veatch. Right. Great interview, by the way, but we thought it'd be good to kind of get you guys in the mindset of what a smart city is by doing a fun little game.
An exercise.
And this is not rehearsed at all. We're going to go through a chronological day of a person in the life of a smart city.
In the future smart city.
Right.
What we think, and this is like probably our naive opinion or our dreams of what a smart city is.
And so we're going to go chronological. I'll give a smart city idea, how this person's going to interact. Hot potato to Kevin. Kevin will give one back to me. And we'll go from waking moments to when they lay their head on their smart pillow.
On their smart pillow. Oh, that's a good idea. All right, to put you in the mental mind state for the exercise that will put you in the mental mind state for the interview. I want you to picture yourselves in sixth grade gym class, that one day when they turned out the lights in the gym and you guys laid on the floor and they would play that nice ambiance music in the background and
like water rainfall or
and your gym teacher would get on and say, all right guys, close your eyes,
feel the feeling from your toes tingling,
going your stress relieving from your head to your toes and exiting the body. You're on a beach, except for right now. Where are we, Ryan? I'm gonna let you start us off.
So right now you just woke up. And how did you wake up? You didn't set an alarm. You woke up because you had a sensor on your finger, and that sensor was able to detect your breathing motions and your REM cycle, and it woke you up in the appropriate time so that you're waking up feeling energized, ready to tackle the day because it is a Monday morning and you're ready to go to work. What happens next,
Wouldn't
Kevin?
that be great? You wake up and you stumble to the bathroom and you turn on the water. Oh, I guess this person lives in the city. Let's just say a building in the city, not a suburb.
Okay.
You turn on the sink and water from the building's water detention and self-cleaning center pours out. So this water, it rained last night, has been stored in storage tanks and cleaned, and you brush your teeth with this recycled water.
Next thing, you're skipping breakfast. I'm skipping breakfast. I'm not ready for that.
Okay.
But elevators haven't changed. You get on an elevator, you go downstairs. But waiting for you is your smart car because it knows that you're heading downstairs, ready to be picked up. You don't even have to open up the door. You step in name your brand, Tesla, Ford, whatever you want to be, smart car, off on your way to work.
Traffic patterns are different today. The cameras around the city can detect traffic patterns. There's a conference in town, so they're unusual. Those sensors pick up these traffic patterns and automatically relay them to your autonomous vehicle. So your vehicle takes a detour on its way to work. You don't know where to park because, like I said, there's a conference in town. But guess what? You have an app on your phone that you can pull up because your car's driving. It's safe for you to use your phone. You can pull up or automatically sync it to your car. You know that there's 3 specific parking locations that are free at the time of your arrival at your destination because of this app. And these sensors are monitoring empty parking spots.
You pull into the parking spot. Next thing, you were using your phone. Now you have your smart AR, VR glasses on your headset. While you're walking into work, you're checking emails. You see an angry email from your boss.
Oof.
Getting ready to walk in that door. It is 8 a.m. You beat the time, but you sit down. You have your normal computers in front of you. Nothing's changed about that. But there is no mouse. There is no keyboard.
Oh.
Neurotransmitters.
It's deviating from smart city, but I like this feature. You're in a VR world.
Yes. No. You're still AR. You're AR. Augmented reality.
Okay.
Augmented reality. But rather than typing through a keyboard, you are now thinking your thoughts into the computer, and it is going through the computer, navigating through your tasks.
Jeez. Okay, so it's lunchtime. you want to grab a bite to eat. You go down to the building's cafeteria. You're in a rush. You walk up to the menu and it changes because it senses your presence and it knows your bio data and it knows your preferences, your gluten allergy, and it automatically pares down the list of hundreds of items to only a few for you to choose from, so you can quickly order your meal without even really having to make that hard of a decision. This meal, I might add, some of it is locally sourced from the rooftop garden on the roof. I do want to add that this building is powered from a solar skin, solar windows, and the use of solar panels where feasible, as well as it's connected to its own little microgrid. You're leaving the building from work. You stayed late. You're the only one on the street. The street lights are out, but as soon as you walk on the sidewalk, you notice that the street lights start to light your path. They're saving energy by not shining when they're not needed. They sense your motion, and as you walk past, they're shining. You stop at a kiosk on the way because you're looking for some entertainment. You want to go out tonight. This kiosk is a smart kiosk with digital touch screens and connected to the internet. You plug in your phone with a little USB, get a charge, and you start to see what the city has to offer when it comes to a happy hour special, or maybe you want to meet some friends out at the bar. So you're able to look up at a local kiosk what in the area, immediate area to your position.
So you see that the St. Louis Blues, Kevin. I'm putting you in St.
Boom.
Louis.
Love it.
St. Louis Blues are playing the Minnesota Wild tonight, and
Rivalry.
right, your hands are full. You don't want to get on, whatever StubHub app or whatever to buy the ticket, but through your headset, they tell you the best seat in the house for the best value is this price in this section. Knowing that you want to buy that ticket, you say confirm, buys that ticket. There you go. Your ticket is to the game. Right after you buy your ticket, and by the way, you bought the tickets on the city's Wi-Fi. You were connected to the city's Wi-Fi the whole time, promoting free Wi-Fi to the city.
To collect your data.
Exactly, to collect your data. That is important because the next thing you see is billboards all around you or advertisements for Blues players' jerseys as you're going to the Blues game, trying to get you to buy their jersey or not, because they know recent data show that you bought a ticket
from your phone
and you are in that area.
It's pinging you.
Exactly.
Hey, this stuff isn't free and it's not always great, but this is the reality.
And guess what? You are sitting next to Jenna Fisher.
There you go.
Yeah, Jenna Fisher. Okay, sorry.
Who, as you're wearing your AR glasses, you now can pull up her profile and all of her bio data, and you can see that she was once a famous actress on the show The Office. So as you leave the game, you pull up your phone, you go back to your vehicle, you're on your way home, back to your building, and you start setting the air conditioner to the right temperature, which uses geothermal. You put on the TV to your favorite show to fall asleep to.
The water heater starts running. Wasn't running the whole day, but it knows you're coming home, so it starts to get warm for a nice little hot shower.
Yeah, and the building is optimizing and using smart meters, so the building knows, hey, most people start showering around this time, so that water heater is going to prepare that water. Your blinds go down so you can block out the future morning sunlight, and little birds fly in the window and start making your bed.
Is this Snow White?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. All right. And that was our attempt at improv, creating a story of the smart city. We have an incredible interview upcoming with Fred Ellermeier, as Ryan mentioned, the VP. And in that, we talk about the basis of a smart city, the technology behind the smart city, and what's really driving the need for these smart cities, and kind of get a realistic picture of where we're at. And I think one thing that, if we're being honest, we didn't have time to just get into all the really cool applications. The applications that are there, one thing we learned is people have all these great ideas. The technology is there. Behind the backbone for smart cities is what we're building and what needs to get there. The user side, where all these cool ideas are, they're there, and there's plenty of them, but we didn't really have the time to go through those. I think the one thing this interview did was it laid the foundation and helped us, I know after the interview, we just started talking about all these potential. I wish we were hot, the mics were hot, because we started talking about all these applications that were popping in our head afterwards.
So like Kevin was saying, the basis of the interview is the structure and foundations being built so that all of these cool apps can be implemented in really the best way? Because it's kind of like autonomous vehicles right now. Maybe the technology is there, but we don't have the 5G network to really
the infrastructure
to really make it happen and make it feasible, make it safe.
Right. So I think what this started getting the wheels turning in our heads about all these cool applications that, in the next decade, as we start to build this infrastructure and build the business case for smart cities, we can start thinking about, okay, how do we use this technology? And I think those ideas exist. There's a lot of them. We just didn't have time to cover them all. Maybe we go do some research in a future episode and just start listing out all the cool apps or applications of these smart cities. So without further ado, here's the interview with Fred Ellermeier. And on the back end, we've got a podium where Ryan and I created our own ideas and had Fred rank them. All right, welcome everyone to the interview of Fred Ellermeier. He is the Vice President of Connected Communities here at Black Veatch. Fred, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
And as mentioned in the intro, the topic today is a smart city. And I think the first question we have to ask is, what is a smart city?
Smart cities are really about efficiency and accessibility. That's really what cities are looking for, is to be accessible to the citizens of the city, and that leads to a degree of efficiency. So think about all the different services that a city provides. It could be energy, it could be transportation, and they're just looking for the best possible use of technology to allow citizens in the city to be connected and for them to have accessibility to the city government.
Okay, so I guess when I think of a smart city, the first thing that comes to mind, and we've mentioned this on previous podcasts, is like a smart house, like the Disney movie Smart House, where you have like this automated AI voice talking to you. Everything is digital, but that's not necessarily the case when you're talking about a smart city. It's not just phone applications and digital applications, right? There's a whole suite of tools there.
There are, and you're thinking about a wide area as well. Smart home technology is really advanced, and so it is some of that same technology that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to see things like the connected kiosks running down Main Street in Kansas City or all over.
The connected kiosk?
Yeah, so these are digital kiosks that have accessible city services on them. If you go along the streetcar line, you're going to see about a couple dozen of those located at different street corners along that 2.5 mile stretch.
Okay.
There are several thousands of those connected kiosks all over New York City. Go down Manhattan and you're going to see those 7-foot tall iPad-looking screens that have connectivity to them. You can connect Wi-Fi to those. You can go look at city services through those. You can search the internet on those, and they're really about digital inclusion. So it's just one example of what we call street furniture on the on the city street.
We kind of answered what is a smart city. For the why, like why is there a drive to implement this smart city idea into the cities themselves? Is it kind of like we all know about urbanization and how much these cities are growing and densifying? Is that kind of the driver behind, or is it more the technology is there so we might as well take advantage of it?
We've heard many cities talk about wanting to just be the smartest city in the world.
Right.
We've heard that several times, and it's a true drive to, again, that idea of helping citizens connect to the city. Let's face it, though, it is about efficiency, saving money.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about economic development. It's about being attractive to that next big business that's coming their way. But it is also to solve many of the city's biggest problems. There's a project that Black Veatch has been working on. I've had my team very closely involved in a smart city development project in the city of San Diego. And we looked at what the biggest problems in San Diego were, some of the affordable housing and homelessness issues,
Mm-hmm.
some of the densification of communication infrastructure. So our study with a number of other technology companies was about trying to help solve those problems using technology. So it's about efficiency, it's about economic development, and ultimately it's really to help solve some of those biggest problems that a city identifies.
So let's get into some of those ideas you mentioned earlier, the kiosks. We can maybe dive further into their application. And then again, with like trying to help homelessness, what are some of the other areas that the technology in smart cities can help solve, and some of the cool applications you're seeing being implemented now?
One of the big ones that I see coming is in the area of crime prevention, public safety.
Okay.
I think we're in this realm where technology, we're going to have to make a decision between data privacy, data security, and ultimately public safety overall. How far are you willing to go with facial recognition technology?
Yeah.
It's super powerful. It's incredible what it can do right now, but we're not all comfortable with it. So we're backing off. We're actually filtering the power of that technology to limit its potential because of the privacy issues. So there's a big area there that I see as potential. I'm willing to give up some of my privacy issues in order to get some security, whether that's data security or physical security issues. So it's things like that. I think that's a big area of development.
So you'd be talking about like cameras being installed all downtown and being able to recognize people's faces. Like, let's say if there's a manhunt or somebody commits a crime, you'd be able to capture their face and pretty much like relay that information to the police.
Yeah, when we have a Super Bowl parade here a week from today or a week from tomorrow, whenever that's going to be.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Sorry. I'll say hypothetically, but let's hope that happens. And wouldn't you like to have that very technology looking at the 1 million+ people converging on downtown Kansas City to enjoy that kind of event? And so it is exactly that. It is that kind of technology that's able to rapidly filter back through a database and determine if there's an offender.
Now, isn't that I've done some research on this topic. Hasn't that been kind of applied in the city of Orlando? And then they kind of repealed it because of that same privacy concerns, but then also like in Hong Kong, they use that. The Chinese government uses a lot over there, and I know that was one of the big protests. Was that during those protests, I guess they were shining laser lights into the cameras to so they couldn't be recognized from a facial recognition standpoint. So you kind of already are seeing the implementation of that and the struggles with that.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. It is interesting to look at the different governments internationally. The German government, for example, is very locked down and not willing to allow that kind of technology. The UK, however, is wide open, and they're much more comfortable with the use of those technologies. So I think we need to go learn lessons from what's going on in other countries, but also in industry. The airline industry is already openly using facial recognition instead of your boarding pass. It's a better, more effective method of allowing you to board a plane using your facial ID, and that's in use right now.
So could that be, instead of like your TSA pre-check, it's kind of like a fast TSA pre-check?
Correct, yeah.
We're all at TSA pre-check.
Yeah. Awesome. And then I noticed, like, I don't know, on the corners in downtown or in the cities, you see like these cameras with like blue or red flashing lights, like shot detectors. I don't know. Is that what those are? Are you familiar with those?
I am. And that's been in use in Kansas City for over a decade now. And it's technology that's advanced, but it's using really cool engineering, call it trigonometry, where they're able to triangulate, well, first of all, sense what a gunshot sounds like as opposed to, say, a backfire of a vehicle.
Or fireworks for when the Chiefs score a touchdown or something like that, yeah.
Those sounds have a fingerprint that is very identifiable through technology, where our ear can't pick up the difference,
right.
But technology can, and then can triangulate where that sound came from, and it's an after-the-fact detection, but it's very rapid. It tells police exactly where the shot came from, and that's expanding technology, both getting more sophisticated and being used. But it's been in Kansas City for over a decade now.
And one more thing on the crime, I noticed it on campuses when I was in college first, and probably being utilized in the kiosks you mentioned were just like, I guess, kind of like SOS areas where, like, in the city, if you don't, for whatever reason, have access to a phone, I know we used to have like the pay phones and whatnot, but you can like request the services of emergency personnel using kiosks. And I don't know if the kiosks in downtown KC kind of utilize the same there.
I'm not sure if they're doing that yet, but that reverse 911 concept where you're being told when there's an emergency as opposed to you having to call 911 to let them know. those technologies are more and more in use. I don't know if we're using our kiosks in that way yet, but I do think that's you're on to something. That's definitely a use case.
Yeah, I know those definitely existed on college campuses when I was going there. Yeah. So it kind of hit on the crime. I think transportation is another big thing that smart cities are helping to incorporate. And the first thing that comes to my mind is what Elon Musk is doing with the Boring Company and digging tunnels underneath the city, because I think most people immediately think of like autonomous vehicles and vehicles being connected and stuff like that, but I think like a smart city would kind of branch out to incorporate just other levels of infrastructure, like tunneling for cars and different types of highways and stuff like that. And then another really cool on the digital side application that I saw that I love now is parking in cities is miserable. And I know in St. Louis they use a specific app where you can see how many parking spots are open in certain areas. And instead of having to like get your quarters out and find the machine, you can literally just get on your phone and it's already hooked up to your credit card and pay for like an hour or two on any parking spot. So do you have any, those are the only two transportation. I know, Ryan, you kind of did some more research.
Well, I guess my question is like, what is the city's involvement with things like autonomous vehicles? You know, is that something, what role do they play to help adopt autonomous vehicles in the future, and how are they planning for things like that?
Yeah, there's so much going on in the transportation sector. It's a huge area. We could spend, the rest of the day talking about everything from connected, electric, autonomous to the parking structures, what's going on in using like smart cameras, smart video to help with identifying parking or violations of parking. So all kinds of different transportation related issues. I think that the biggest thing that comes up here is really around the area of regulation. So when you ask, are cities doing anything, I think it's more at the federal level. The technology has raced forward rapidly, but it's keeping up with what's going on the city streets from a regulatory standpoint. That's really probably going to be the long pole in the tent here, the one that really has to come along more quickly, and that's going to be state and federal regulations. The idea that we're able to be in a connected vehicle that has advanced features that keep us much safer, that's coming now. I think we're all seeing that in the vehicles we drive already. Those will continue to advance. But the area of autonomous vehicles in particular, I think there was a lot of hopeful thinking. I was in that category of, man, this is coming faster than you think. But as I've looked at it closer over the last year, the regulatory side of that's and being able to have, let's say, half the vehicles autonomous and half of them not autonomous out on the roadway right now, that's a problem. How do you handle that, and what are the regulations around that? So there's a lot of things to figure out in that part of our transportation system.
So I had a thought when I was laying in bed last night, kind of with transportation and smart cities. When you watch movies and it's like all autonomous or all I guess autonomous vehicles where there's like no stoplights, like cars are just passing each other, kind of like a weaving. Is that, you obviously have to have 100% autonomous to get to that level, but like, is that a possibility? You know what I mean? Where like there are no stoplights, it's just all the cars are talking so quickly with each other that like you just go to your route.
No. and then all of a sudden your car like lags because it's not picking up service, and
then in a wreck or
you're
something.
a millisecond behind, and then there's a million car pile.
But is that like, I mean, maybe not within obviously the next 10 years, but let's say by the time I'm sitting on my deathbed, something like that is possible.
I think that's definitely the potential. Maybe not quite the way the movies portray it, but but if you're able to have that low latency communication, that vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to grid communications, you can drive at that tailgate distance and do it very quickly without problems. That kind of technology is what's being developed right now. It also makes me think about Hyperloop technology, which Black Veatch is also working on, and that's also that high speed on demand. So it isn't my flight's at 3, I'm taking the Hyperloop right now, and it's on demand, whether that's personal or parcel transportation. And so those kinds of autonomous and high-speed transportation systems they're in our future. And like you say, is it going to happen all this decade? Maybe not, but we're going to make a lot of progress on them in the 20s.
So another area I kind of want to touch on is the water aspect. And so, here in Kansas City, we're pretty fortunate that we're not regulated maybe like California, let's say, who goes through droughts and telling them when to use their water and when not to use their water. What are maybe some like smart city applications on making the water system more efficient so that there is always kind of that supply of water and, using the right quantity at the right times?
Yeah, the water industry is so impressive in the way they've kept us safe and healthy through amazing water purification, both in the clean water side and the wastewater side, and also in detecting foreign substances, whether that was done accidentally or on purpose. It's amazing how reliable and how safe we can just count on our water systems to be. I do think that water reuse is an area that our water business would talk about. Kind of that I don't know, toilet to tap, that ability to go back to back, and I think there's a very efficient aspect to that water reuse. I think that's where we're going to see a lot more. There's been a lot of technology advancement in the last, say, 20 years, and we're going to see a lot more. And then desal is always that panacea out there where we're going to be able to take the vast amounts of salinated water, brackish water.
Yeah, what does salinated water and brackish water mean?
So ocean water. Okay. So it would be the worst, the toughest case when you're taking, that we have so little of the water supply is actually fresh water. What is it, 0.1% or something of the globe's total water is actually fresh water. All the rest is some form of brackish or salinated water, and it's very difficult to take salinated water and make it drinkable or potable. So the research around how to do that in an energy efficient and cost effective way, that's been the problem, is there isn't a very good efficient way to make that water usable. And I think we'll continue to see innovations around there. I know there's a lot of really smart people working on it.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess I have a question, like just when it's raining, like trying to capture that, what do you call, I don't know what kind of water that is, storm water, a lot of it just seems to go in the sewers, whereas in the smart city, like in the ideal smart city DC applications to kind of like keep that. I know keeping water is technically like illegal to a certain extent, so I don't know like what you've seen on that front.
Well, even like some of our the LEED certification around a building gets credit for having rainwater capture systems, and it's another form of water reuse, or having gardens that protect that water supply. And so pretty interesting area there. Let's do some more research on it.
And then one major area that smart cities can help solve is like the energy efficiency, and I think this comes from buildings having their own little microgrid, whether that be capturing solar on top. Because I know the use of the sun, and I back when I was in high school and wanted to be an engineer, I went to some engineering camp, and like designing like a smart city was kind of like our thing. And like heat capture, like so much heat is like, and I'm gonna butcher this, like wasted and stored like within like the blacktops and on top of the buildings, where we need to be utilizing like that sun, whether it's like not letting it reflect as much and trying to capture it as a heat source, or using it from like a solar energy where buildings are all decked out with solar panels to kind of produce their own energy, but then also using connected meters throughout the day. You have these tall buildings, and I don't know how efficient they are, but I think the future of a smart city is these buildings are efficiently turning on their air conditioning and heating during prime parts of the day, but using these smart and connected appliances able to control exactly how much energy they're using and really decrease the need that a city can pull from the grid.
One of the questions I had in regards to energy efficiency is, like you mentioned earlier, the LEED ratings. For a non-engineer or someone, what do the LEED ratings mean, and how do buildings go about acquiring those certain LEED ratings?
Yeah, so LEED certification is an area that it covers a broad sense of what it means to be efficient in a building. Even, having a bike rack out in front of a building gets you a point, I think. There's a whole number. But then, of course, the energy efficiency, the water use type issues that we discussed, you accumulate a number of points and you make a decision as a building owner, building developer on how far you want to go with that. So there's LEED bronze, LEED silver, LEED gold, and platinum. And the idea of an energy efficient building is huge. Today you mentioned solar. There's even a solar PV skin that you can put on the surface of the building, on the glass,
wow.
that not just the rooftop anymore. And those are growing in their development. They're not all the way there yet. They're not all the way efficient yet, but that's the kind of technology that's being worked on. I'm on the other side. You mentioned your high school camp, and I remember as an engineer when the whole renewable energy realm came in, and when it came to microgrids, there was a point where we didn't even want to talk to our utility clients about those because it was it was competition for the kinds of power systems they were installing, but they've become a part of what we have to do to be sustainable, to protect against climate change. So what you see is that the invention occurs. Solar energy is a great example of this, and I think all the different building tech, whether it's the mechanical systems, the HVAC systems that are controlled better and more efficiently, they all go through this process where the technology is invented by some entrepreneur, some technologist, and then they go into the OEMs and they beat on them. They make them more efficient. Over the years, they get more and more efficient, and that's what's happened to the solar industry, where you've seen constant advancement and more improvement to the point now where it's as efficient as any other type of power source. And that, that obviously hasn't always been the case. So I think that's what we see happening across the realm of these different technologies. I think that where we'll end up is, the LEED rating maybe won't be necessary because, it'll just be the efficient use of building infrastructure. There won't be a choice that, I don't want to be a efficient building. I want an inefficient building. That won't even be an option because that's just what we'll do. We'll just build things as efficiently as we can.
The technology will be there to make sense, kind of to take advantage of it.
Exactly.
So the future building will automatically have this skin, these solar panels in the window, solar panels, or maybe instead of solar panels on the roof, you have your own little urban farming, which can help with water retention and water runoff in cities.
Everyone has their own little solar panel, and that's what you do to create your little urban garden inside your building. And then,
they're super efficient with water.
Let's build that.
Yeah, how far off would that be?
Not this decade.
So
let's talk about it again in a few years.
Do you have any other cool ideas about energy efficiency or even just urbanization from a building perspective that are out there, kind of like that skin? You talked about that skin on the buildings.
From a building standpoint, I do think that the way we heat and cool will continue to advance. There are improvements in those systems, both in the mechanical systems as well as in the controls.
Right.
How we control, how we cycle the heat and the cold. Sometimes in the same building we're pushing waste heat out but trying to heat cold parts of the building. And so how do we get better at using that heat cycle, using our heat systems better, or our cooling systems as well. So I think that's where efficiencies will continue to be made.
All right.
One of the areas that we haven't really touched on yet that I think is really interesting is the idea of floating housing. And so I've done a little bit of research on this, and actually one of my coworkers has been helping out as a part of his kind of 5 hours a week type of work. But there's this idea in certain areas, and there's already a city, I believe it's in the Netherlands, that there's a community of around 50 houses or so that are floating houses. And so the idea is in cities where real estate is so expensive and is so densified, like San Francisco, for example, and in the U.S. there's a big study in San Diego about cost of living is so high and real estate of land is so high that there's this idea that you can build these floating houses, and these floating houses can be mobile. Obviously, they're on water, but it's a way to kind of increase the city's footprint. And I don't know, I've been talking to my coworker about this, and I'll try to kind of keep you updated. But the idea is essentially, that you'd have these units. It wouldn't be a whole city that's like on one platform, but like a house is one platform. So that house can move from San Diego to San Francisco, and you kind of just like tug it on a tugboat type of thing. But these urban areas would have their own infrastructure. So like within the bay, you would have wastewater lines and electrical lines and all that stuff to provide the necessary infrastructure to that quote unquote city on the water. So I mean, that's something that I've learned recently that I thought it was far off, but like there's actual municipalities looking at that and seeing like what is the feasibility, because like I said, they're already doing it in it's a European northern country. I want to say it's the Netherlands that's already doing that.
Creating new real estate.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh man, the meat of the smart cities, or at least what comes to the forefront of everyone's mind, is the digital experience when it comes to smart cities. Could you touch on some of those applications that are being developed kind of along the lines of the kiosk?
You bet. What we think about and look at is that it really all comes down to what's going on in the digital area. That's really what this is all about. So when we start by talking about the importance of connectivity. So, having the 4G experience was so important to get our mobile phones connected, so that we could have apps and so that we could access the world around us. 5G is going to take that to the next level. Now you've got edge processing. You've got really that ability to compute at the source of the data is going to revolutionize, and that's where it's going to be fun to watch what happens in the data world. So think about it that way. That first requirement is ubiquitous connectivity. And then you got to have the stuff in the middle, and we call that the IoT, the Internet of Things. Yeah. All the things that are creating the data, the sensors, whether it could be something you're inputting data to manually, it could be something that's collecting data like a camera. But why do you do all that? It's so that you can access it digitally and do really cool things at it. So it's what's fun to watch in this smart city space is the developments across each of those layers. And so when you bring up the digital side of things, we're going to continue to see innovations that lead us to, things like Uber and Airbnb. And, you think about when Netflix was invented, they were mailing you, you know that whole story. So, but they saw the future, and that's the future we're living in now. And the 5G world, because that first layer is going to be that much more connected, is going to set up a landscape where our IoT gets to be that much smarter, and it doesn't have to just send dumb data back to be processed somewhere, but it can actually be processed on site. Mm-hmm. And then the ability to develop, and that's the digital applications is going to be that next big frontier of development. And I'm anxious. I'm watching, because where we get involved is on the communications layer, and we install and develop out that IoT layer, and then we have people like Atonics and other digital friends and partners who then go build the apps and the data side of it. What I really think is going to happen, we're now tethered to our smartphones, and that's our way of connecting to the world now. Whether you're talking just to an app or to even getting to virtual reality and augmented reality, but I think what we're going to start to see is that connectivity point evolve, and that's going to be the big development is wearables. Think about what whether that's biometrics or something that allows you to know what's going on in kind of another realm or another place. Our ability to connect digitally is going to open up that whole window of what we can do with digital technology and apps, if you will.
To a user, to an everyday Joe, what does the IoT and the development of 5G, like, what are we going to realize? Like, obviously, like, it opens the door for all these applications, but to someone who doesn't really understand the concept and is just someone using an application, what are they going to see from that? Like, is it just faster speed times, or they're going to be connected? Like, what does that mean?
Well, it's not just faster.
Okay.
It's enhanced everything. And so far, things like augmented reality have kind of stayed in the realm of a parlor trick. You know, it's kind of a cool thing to experience, and then you go on about your day.
Right.
The 5G connectivity is going to make things like that more usable in the real world.
Okay.
And so think about Siri and the virtual assistant thing, the Alexa, the Echo it started out as a little bit of a parlor trick, and now we're using it all the time. You know, the fact that you tell Siri where you want to go, or you ask Alexa to add something to your grocery list, or whatever it is. And I think that same thing that was made available through 4G and Wi-Fi and that kind of connectivity. 5G is going to take that on the road, because you're going to have that high internet speed everywhere, not just in a certain locations. And it's going to allow for things like augmented reality to go to that next level.
And will it kind of allow for like more apps to be developed, in the sense that like, we only use our phone for certain applications, and we're not using our phone 100% of the time, let's say. But if there's applications that like we kind of use, like lifetime tracking of certain things, and that's obviously a bunch of data that's being emitted out. And if every person in the city is using that, you have to not only have it be emitted, but you have to have a source to kind of collect it as well. Is that kind of what the Internet of Things is, and kind of how 5G enables that?
Right, and you mentioned your phone, so it'll be in the form of a wearable or an implantable. So it won't like you say, it'll be available 24/7, not just when you have your phone open and in your hand.
So are you saying Google Glass might be? Are you?
That's the line of thing I'm talking.
You're thinking Google Glass, that they tried that in the 2010s, and it failed, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And yes, it did.
So we have you on mic saying that you think the
comeback.
augmented reality is going to be the biggest comeback of the decade when it comes to smart cities and these applications.
Let's go with that. Yeah.
All right.
I'm in.
So have you seen you talked about like the back end, like you guys really developed the infrastructure for this. Have you seen any cool applications or ideas being developed already on the consumer side? Like, have you seen, like you say, augmented reality? Well, what are some of those cool applications? Like, how would I use augmented reality when walking down a smart city?
Well, so it's some of the things we've talked about. It's about that accessibility. It's about public safety, knowing what's going on in your surroundings, being able to access the world around you.
Like a virtual police officer would just pop out of the sky if you're, because he sees you're doing something wrong on camera.
Not in the 20s. Let's push that one out a couple more decades.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's also where a lot of the innovation has to still occur.
Okay.
I'm kind of counting on you guys to be the ones that, because we're getting that 5G connectivity out there, and we're going to have a whole bunch of this IoT out. You mentioned the kiosks earlier. What else can you embed in those kiosks? You can embed the environmental sensor. You can embed the shot detection, the shot spotter type technology. You can embed the smart video that brings in. So now you need to go, what are you going to do with all of that available data? And what kind of wearable device do you have? Let's call it Google Glass, because it's going to look a little cooler next time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as nerdy. It's going to be accepted. And I don't know that it's going to actually be in the form of glasses, but it will be wearables and embeddables.
So kind of want to touch on your role as Vice President of Connected Communities at Black Veatch. What is Connected Communities at Black Veatch doing, and what's kind of like your role with these private and city governments?
So our main mission in life with Connected Communities right now is about using Black Veatch core competencies in this new market of both fiber development is one of the big things we're working on right now. So there's new customers, a new customer base, both municipal, state, and private developers that are out building fiber infrastructure. So we've been, we've had a great business in building those communication systems for a long time. Well, we're taking that out into a new customer base and opening new doors for the company, but then also using the Black Veatch core competencies to go build these smart cities. So we did the first few thousand of those kiosks in downtown Manhattan. So we were the the construction manager on that. So we used Black Veatch capabilities, stuff we do every day, to develop out a new type of technology.
And I want to jump in real quick. I think I remember, for all the listeners, go back and listen to the 5G episode. We give a lot of background, but I remember like copper is kind of like the basis of 4G LTE, whereas now fiber is kind of like the quickest way we have to transmit that data from point to point, correct?
You're right about that.
So that's kind of like this, I don't know what you call it, the nervous system, or like the physical part of 5G, like the physical backbone, right?
So with that being said, it's a question I have with 5G and implementing it is that, with 5G, you have a lot more frequency of, we'll call them towers, or where you're
locations.
Yeah, locations, and you're having to run fiber to that. So how are these urban areas planning for and implementing 5G, on New York City? That's all concrete. It's a concrete jungle. How are they implementing 5G without tearing up the whole entire sidewalk?
They're not. They're tearing it up, and that's a big part of where Black Veatch comes in, is the ability to go build in that physical world and install, whether it's towers, whether it's antennas on a building, or one. Well, and you mentioned weaving this into the smart city.
Yeah,
a big part of smart cities is also about using infrastructure in new ways. So, a dumb streetlight pole has now become vertical real estate, where the cities have value in being able to sell or rent out access attachment rights. And so, just as an example, that could be on buildings, that could be on bridges, that could be on any number of types of infrastructure. Utilities being able to use their installed infrastructure for this densified 5G equipment that has to be installed, and then companies like Black Veatch being able to go out and provide that fiber connectivity out to all those sites. We're going to be tearing up a lot of stuff, and again, that's where Black Veatch, we're good at that, and that's where
we're good at tearing things
up and leaving it the way we found it. Putting it back into good condition.
So right now, let's say you're connecting fiber from, I'm calling it node to node, or 5G transmitter to 5G transmitter. I'm assuming like things like the kiosks will also have fiber ran to them. So
correct, yeah.
Do you need to run fiber to all of these different devices that makes a smart city connected? And if so, then are you guys just like, while you're already tearing it up, are these cities also having you like, hey, let's just run like 96 more strands of fiber and we're just going to leave it? Or are you seeing like, as this technology develops and develops, you're just going to be tearing up the same sidewalk over and over and over again just to keep installing fiber and fiber and fiber? Or is that even how it works?
Yeah. Well, so you're onto something there. So you can get the fiber to the node, and then you can use other communications, local communications technologies. And there's a few. There's some even that are specifically made for that local connectivity of the IoT world. So there's a few different communication protocols out there made for that. So you don't have to keep tearing it up every time you want to put in another device. But you're also correct that we are putting in a whole bunch of empty conduit, dark fiber that isn't, we don't know what it's going to be used for yet, but we know it's going to be needed.
Yeah.
If you need a few dozen strands, you go install a few hundred strands. And so, and the capacity to pull more. So the way that you can put in the duct and blow the fiber these days, that technology is pretty fascinating as well. Just the ability to go get the fiber installed once the duct is in place is pretty fascinating. So you don't have to go bet on today's technology. You can have the duct there ready for tomorrow's fiber technology, because that's always improving too. There's that landscape. And so you're right about you don't have to keep tearing up that street every time. We're planning ahead.
So then that IoT would be kind of wireless, maybe, like those devices are talking wirelessly, because you have that one node that kind of controls its own area.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So with connected communities, who is your primary client? Is it private companies? Is it municipalities? Or is it kind of a mixture?
We've spent a lot of time developing out relationships with cities, with the municipal governments. We see incremental moves towards the connected community and the smart city. I think it's still looking for the right business case is the reason it hasn't scaled.
Mm-hmm.
The Smart Cities is not, let me get it out there, Smart Cities is not scaled as a business as quickly as we and most other companies working in this area have believed that it would. We thought in the tens there would be a whole lot more. There were projections out there. I remember a couple of years ago, $1.4 trillion of smart city business. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen, but the potential is still there. And it's nobody's fault. It's just that business case hasn't been fully proven. So when the cities tell us we want to be the smartest city in the world, what does that mean? What do we need to go do? How much is it going to cost? And the cool thing I see is that in all of this technology we've talked about, there's as much innovation going on in the business models of this stuff as well. So that idea of dumb infrastructure becoming smart and becoming, having new uses. And now you can get a revenue stream from advertising off of a kiosk sitting on a street corner.
Okay.
Just as one example, or the revenue stream that comes off of an attachment right that a city can go get. So those business models, as they get put into place through, say, a public-private partnership, are going to develop out the ability for a city to move forward with more technology. Yeah. And I do think that the need for better connectivity, so this 5G world is also going to make a big impact on that IoT realm and some of the things we've already talked about. I think that the business cases will become more compelling as we get just a little bit further here in the 20s. Yeah. So another prediction, in the 20s, we're going to see those business cases take off better and faster, and the smart city business will take off more.
I have one last question before we get into our podium that we're going to have you either participate in or judge. What you mentioned a couple of the projects that you guys have worked with in connected communities in San Diego, and also you said Manhattan is where those kiosks are. What are some of the other cool projects that you guys have gotten the opportunity to work on, or at least look into developing?
We have to talk about transportation. There's a couple really nice transportation projects. We've been supporting the Growth Accelerator, Rick Azer and his team, on a project in San Diego. We're working with Sandag on what they call their 5 big moves. And so this is the San Diego region saying we need to deploy smart. We need to think about our infrastructure I think the planning period goes out to 2050. Okay. And so how are we going to incorporate all forms of technology? How are we going to be ready for connected and even autonomous vehicles? How are we going to use our right-of-ways in a smart way to deploy fiber? Mm-hmm. So how are we going to handle transportation across the border, which they have to. So a number of different studies, evaluations in this 5 big moves that we're very, very happy, very pleased to be involved in, thinking about how to help a community in their transportation. The other, we were working on a corridor, which I think this will be a good example of the kinds of projects that we're going to see going forward. We were helping the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority with a corridor development around how to get the maximized use, both from a recreational path standpoint as well as from deployment of technology. How do we make it safe? How do we use kiosks? How do we use smart video? But then also on transit-oriented development. So TODs are important because when you have a corridor like the one that they have, how do you
What do you mean by a corridor?
So it's a linear corridor about 17 and a half miles down the east side of Kansas City.
Is that the tram or what?
It's the Rock Island corridor.
Okay.
It's an old rail corridor.
Oh, okay.
So this is a place where we're able to just go in and think about the potential of both a technology and a development ground up.
Okay, so kind of like a from scratch.
From scratch.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've had a team, Black Veatch in the lead. They call us their master developer, and we're able to go in and kind of dream big and think about what the possibilities are. And we've had this idea of what we're calling a linear research park. So think about everything from manned aerial vehicle testing, drones. We've talked to Hyperloop about it. The ability to use this corridor, a whole number of different linear research possibilities that could be put along this corridor, along with everything else, along with the recreational side, along with the adjacent transit-oriented development.
When do we get to see the results of that study? Or
we've actually completed the first phase, and that was the one that I fondly call the art of the possible. We went and thought about all of the different possibilities that could be developed along this corridor, and now we're officially into a phase 2 where we're gonna go make decisions on what we're actually going to do. So it's coming.
Just to wrap things up, we've kind of stolen your time here for a little bit. Ryan and I, and Becca will not be joining us. She's out of town. Are going to finish off with a podium of smart city ideas that we thought of. And did you happen to think of any ideas?
I'll judge if you want me to be the judge.
Okay, you'll be the judge. So the way this goes is we'll just go back and forth and give our bronze, silver, and gold of ideas that we thought the city of the future could use. And at the end, you'll tell us who's the best.
Awesome.
All right. So I think my bronze, choosing between two, my bronze will be kind of like a similar, like a kiosk, a central location where restaurants can store leftover food. And I know homeless people may not be able to have access to cell phones and whatnot, but if we're utilizing these kiosks in smart cities, they could kind of find, maybe, you have a unique pin, you can go find where your allocation of food is. Like, hey, this restaurant a mile away has leftover food that's being placed in a refrigerator outdoor that you have accessibility to, and you can locate it on one of these kiosks, go to the fridge, enter your unique pin, and you have access to your meal right there. So instead of throwing it out, we can have a controlled way and give access to those who don't have the ability to pay for their own food.
All right. Same note as we'll call it waste. You're talking waste there. I'll talk waste as well. One of the things that bugs me, and I think is pretty common in big cities, is trash and garbage, and that a lot of times leads to bad smells. And so I think a pretty easy way is to monitor one, and I think there's low-hanging fruit, but trash can levels. And so right now, I think the way that it works is most garbage companies, they probably have just a cyclical time schedule that they'll go replace this trash or go pick it up every day, something like that. That's a lot of wasted man hours probably, because you probably don't need to pick it up every time. But then at the same time, you could have maybe certain areas you need to pick it up and get rid of the trash more often. So just have implementing whether it's radar or something within these trash cans to see where the trash levels are at. So that way there is a more efficient process as far as getting trash out of the cities and keeping a clean city. So,
I like that. So keeping the streets clean.
Yeah, keeping the streets clean, man.
All right. So mine is a personal pet peeve. Parking.
This is your silver.
This is my silver. So my silver is a personal pet peeve. People who park, and especially in cities, parking is very limited. So you have people who are double parked, or maybe they're hanging off the edge because they don't know how to parallel park 3 feet, or they're just in a commuter lot and they're angled, and it makes it difficult for a larger car to slip in because of the angle. Having parking spots that can you pull in and maybe you're at an angle and it'll automatically, like a conveyor belt, just adjust to your car, kind of move your car so you're perfectly
help with bad drivers.
Yeah, you just help with bad drivers. So you can't fully pull into this spot on the street. Well, it's okay. The street will have some kind of mechanism, a conveyor or whatever, just scoot you on. And I know that's ridiculous and not ever going to be implemented, but it'd be really cool.
Since this is a little bit of a competition, I'm going to point out a flaw.
Whoa.
We're eventually going to become autonomous vehicles, so perfect parking, no bad parking.
Yeah, maybe. No, I know,
so.
But not everybody has that right now.
Yeah,
so.
No, I agree.
Okay.
No, short term.
And maybe some of these autonomous vehicles,
they still suck at parking too.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll have stereotypes of certain autonomous vehicle.
Yeah, those cars suck at parking.
So now my silver is about energy efficiency, and it has to do with maybe large scale buildings are doing this, but more even in just the residential space is the right time to open and close your blinds, or the right time to, I have a Nest at my house, but right now the Nest is kind of, I set when it turns on the heat and not. And so the way a Nest works kind of is it understands your heating and cooling patterns. So when I am gone for the day, I always turned it down to 65 or something like that. And when I got home, I turn it up to 72, for example. So the Nest knows when I get home, it'll turn it up for me to 72. But the expansion of that into having a more constant monitoring of my house and of my temperature, and like almost recommending how I should operate my house to be as efficient as possible, instead of like me telling the device how to operate. And that device, it tells you. So that's my silver. It's kind of high level, but
I think that exists.
In May.
I think that exists.
Well,
so I mean, if you're gonna trash mine, I'm gonna start trashing yours. All right. So my gold, and this is a multi-part, is using biodata, whether that be facial recognition or just you can sense the location of someone's phone. You have access to their data based on like, hey, I'm carrying my phone that has all my cookies on it. Or you can create like this online digital profile that you control, where you're walking around and I walk up to this kiosk, and let's say that I have dietary preferences and I'm looking for a restaurant near me. It automatically knows my dietary preferences and will automatically direct me to a location that meets my needs. And these dietary preferences could be vegetarian, gluten-free, or you're just macro-friendly. You can also use this to go into a restaurant, let's just say like a McDonald's, and let's say like I track my calories on my phone and I have 600 calories left with so many carbs, grams, and fats. The menu that I see will automatically filter and select a meal for me that would fit in that. So, and just because it knows through my phone, like, hey, I'm using this specific app, it's part of my chosen biodata, and it automatically loads to the menu for me, and it can kind of filter out all these unnecessary options.
I'll be looking like Hercules.
Yeah, yeah, man.
I'll go with my
TM. I TM that idea.
Yeah. My goal is more just of a grievance, and it's gold because I would love for it to get fixed, is parking and large events. So, for example, Arrowhead parking is one of the most frustrating things ever, because there's 60,000 cars, for example, and it takes you, I have to plan like an hour and a half just to find a parking spot. And there's always, we talked about empty parking spots and stuff, but a way where you know where your seat is at, and they kind of like tell you almost what section to park in, and it's because it's going to be whatever closest to your seat. It's going to cut down on the security lines to go through, something like that, so that way you're having a more informed decision on where you park at these certain events and how it's going to lead to a more efficient and less congested process, rather than just, hey, show up to the stadium, good luck finding a parking spot, get to your seat on time. And it's just like,
or especially in the city.
Yeah,
there's
especially
like a convention.
in the city. Exactly, and a convention or something like that. I mean, we had a convention earlier where you're stuck on the street because everyone's
20 minutes to move 10 meters.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
exactly. A way that, you know, you're providing information that's they're gonna analyze that and analyze all these different data points. And data points, when I mean data points, I mean like attendees, and it'll kind of recommend or tell you, dictate where you need to park. And so the idea, would be to help with parking, but then also security lines too, you know, not having everyone go through one security area. So that's kind of a high level, but that's my goal.
Man, your gold was parking.
It was more expansion on just the whole touristic experience, or the, you know, city experience.
Fred?
Okay, Fred.
Thoughts?
I want you to pick your favorite idea, but then also overall who had the best of the three ideas.
You're gonna put me on the spot.
We're gonna put you on the spot. Yeah.
Is there a prize like for that I get to give?
Pride.
Yeah,
it's pride. We won't let this go.
Well, so a couple of observations. There were mentions of actual technology that exists.
I had a feeling.
So, but usually with a twist. So,
okay.
The Ryan, your bronze garbage. Look up Big Belly.
Okay,
so Big Belly is a manufacturer making trash cans that you'll see out on city streets that are being used that have sensor-based technology in them. Now, what I liked about your idea is that you mentioned the odor, and they've not incorporated anything, because do we care if the trash can's only half full if it's stinking up the whole block?
You're right.
Let's use a odor detection and use that as one of the inputs. So
I just searched Big Belly. First thing I did not get was the company Big Belly.
You should not have searched Big Belly on your laptop.
I finally got to the website.
Sorry about that. Go home and search. Yeah, that's funny. Let's see. The other one, there is a big need out there. We talk about in our San Diego report, there's this concept out there of a food desert. Not having enough food that people aren't. But what we actually found through this study and what we kind of developed some new terminology, it's really a food swamp. If you have, the means to do so, you can go feed yourself well and in a healthy way. But the cheap food, the food that some can afford, is all that they can afford, is not high quality. It's not. It's not nourishing. It's not help. So it wasn't so much a lack of food; it was a lack of good food, and so not a food desert, but a food swamp. And so, how you can incorporate this idea of kiosks. That was another way that how you use technology then to help the people that need it to get access to the healthy foods.
Yeah.
So. You guys both had a parking idea.
I think mine was better as my goal, though.
So I agree that we're going autonomous, and I also, there's cars in our parking lot right now that just park themselves, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how good that technology is yet. It might need some work, but that's...
Well, Ryan, you could just you can get out of your car and let it go park itself at the game. So
that is true, but you probably need, it's kind of like school. You need parking lanes, so now we're just going to have a really long line of people waiting to get out of their cars.
I think we should just both, nix our parking ideas.
So I guess then maybe, overall, do you have one that you really loved? If our ideas suck that bad, you can just
take an Uber.
Take an Uber, okay.
Just get an Uber.
So overall winner then, which of us three did you like?
Well, so one more comment.
Yeah.
So you're gold, Kevin. The idea of there's some concepts out there about the hyper-local advertising using beacon technology. You opt in through your mobile device saying, yes, I want to be advertised to. And if it knows that you like lattes in the afternoon, then you're going to...
That was my third point on that was, your kiosk, as I walk by, would change to lattes.
Yep. So that's real technology called beacon technology that exists. It's not deployed much. It turns out to be this issue of data privacy again, that, I don't want to opt into something. I don't want to be known or advertised to. So that's a gap. But your idea of the smart menu, now that's otherworldly. That's now I only have available to me. Having just gone through the holidays, if let's say I could only get the stuff I really needed, and I'm not going to see all the stuff I shouldn't have. Now that
you won't be tempted.
Yeah. I'm in on the smart menu idea.
All right.
So does that mean that's the overall?
I think that's
I'll
the
concede.
Okay. Yes. I do like the smart home ideas. I think you mentioned that some of those are out there already, but I don't know any that are telling you when to close your blinds, and so you get a I don't know, you're right there, man.
More like recommendations or just doing it. Yes, things like blinds or I don't know. My parents have a heated floor.
You don't need that when it's...
but when to turn that on, I don't know.
When you're not on it, yeah. All right, well, thank you for choosing me as the winner, and thank you for taking your time out of the day.
It's been great being here, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.
Thanks for listening today, you guys. For more episodes, you can catch us on iTunes at Close of Business Podcast. Make sure to get on there and give us good reviews and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. And for your social media needs, you can hit us up on Instagram and on Twitter at COB Podcast. Be sure to follow us so you can get all of the alerts for our new episodes and check out what we're up to. If you want to shoot us an email with your questions or comments, you can do so at cobpodcast@gmail.com. See ya.